All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us virtually for this presentation. We're trying to do things as much in person or virtually as we can. So thank you for the people who did come in person tonight to watch as well. Tonight we are blessed to be having a presentation about barred owls, which are super adorable. And our guest speaker is Audrey Blackburn, and she is the Community Engagement Manager for the Carolina Raptor Center. Throughout the presentation, you all are welcome to write your questions in the chat box or raise your hand, and you can actually turn on your microphone and you can ask questions throughout. Audrey wants to keep it as fluid as possible. So, you know, if people have questions, it's okay to stop the presentation and ask those. So I will turn it over to her.
All right, please ask questions. Otherwise, it's just me talking at you, and frankly, nobody wants that. So if you're inquisitive about anything at all, you know, definitely put it in chat and we will, you know, answer it for you. So welcome, I'm so excited. I love doing these presentations for you guys. My name again is Audrey Blackburn, and I am the Community Engagement Manager at Carolina Raptor Center, which is located in Huntersville. We're north of Charlotte. You know, before I start, it's always important for me to convey what we do at our facility. So just wanted to show you our mission real quick, if I can. Tara, we practiced this, and there we go. Now I can finally work it. So our mission basically is really, we want to ignite imaginations, and our goal is to inspire engagement in the natural world. And the way we do that is through exploration and the rehabilitation of birds of prey. So our facility is pretty cool because we have a raptor rehab hospital. It's one of the largest in the United States in terms of volume. We care for over 1,000 birds every year. The other portion of our facility is all about education. So we've got a really cool trail that you can come and hike on. You can see from this picture, it's in the woods. It's absolutely beautiful. We've got about 60 different birds that you can view up close and learn more about. So if you're ever interested, check out our website. It's carolinaraptorcenter.org. And you can learn more about what we do and how to come visit us. So tonight, we are going to talk about one of my very favorite animals. You may have heard me earlier, I mentioned that I've got some volunteers on this call, and they can attest to how much I love these guys, barred owls. Barred owls are extraordinary. So typically when I'm out on the trail and I'm talking to visitors and we're looking at barred owls, I feel that most people identify these birds by their call. And their call is so distinctive that it kind of sounds like a human sentence. So I'm not even going to pretend to make the call, but just know that it sounds like, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So Google it if you're curious as to what it actually sounds like, because I'm not going to embarrass myself doing, you know, an impersonation, but just know that it's very distinctive. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it, and that's, you know it. So they have this distinctive call. The funny thing is they don't just have that one call. They do have other calls that they make. It's just that's the most distinctive. One of my favorite things about my job is that people will text me or email me pictures of birds, but they'll also send me recordings of sounds. And 99% of the time, they're sending me a barred owl call because they're looking for this, but what they hear actually sounds like monkey chatter. So if you hear a lot of birds in the woods that sound like monkeys are chattering, that's actually barred owls as well. So let's kind of talk a little bit about what barred owls look like and how to tell them apart from all the other owls, because we have quite a few species here in North Carolina. So there is a handsome barred owl on the right of your screen. So just really distinctive characteristics, because it does look different than our other species. It just has a really round head. And to go with that, it just doesn't have any ear tufts. It doesn't have any feathers that are sticking up like you would see on a great horned owl. So another thing to look for are the color of the eyes. you will notice in this picture, they are very, very dark. So either black or very, very, very dark brown. And one thing I always like to talk to people about, because I feel like not a lot of people know this, but you can actually generally tell when an owl hunts, likes to actively hunt, by the color of their eyes. So looking at this bird's eyes, because it has dark eyes, the way I remember it is that dark like the night. This is one of the true nocturnal owls that we have. He likes to hunt at nighttime. But we've got other owls out there that have different colored eyes, believe it or not. So great horned owls have fantastic yellow eyes, and they are more crepuscular. They like to hunt more dusk and dawn. We have other owls that have orange eyes. And so know that not all owls are true nocturnal. A lot of them will hunt in the day, will hunt at dusk and dawn, not just at night. And looking at the eye color is usually an indicator of when they like to hunt. Another way to identify this owl from other owls out there is that yellow beak. It is a raptor, so it does have that nice curved, sharp beak. And it's a fairly large bird. If you see this bird, you're like, oh, that's a big bird. So about 18 inches tall. It's not the largest owl that we have in North Carolina. That would be the great horned owl. They are a bit bigger, but it's a pretty big bird, and has an average wingspan of 41 inches, which is pretty big when spread out.
It looks like we do have a question in the chat, Audrey.
Do it. Let's do questions.
How and why the color of its eyes determine when an owl hunts. So I think you kind of covered that. And then why they can totally.
It has to do with how much light goes into the eye. So the darker the eye, the more light that comes in at nighttime. Super beneficial. Anyway, move on.
Thank you. No, thank you for elaborating. And then why can they totally rotate their heads and how this differs from other birds?
I love it. I love it because you know what? I was not going to talk about this tonight, but we should totally talk about this because it's one of those like common misconceptions thanks to cartoons that we all digested when we were younger. So in cartoons, they turn their head all the way around and keep on living. Y'all, that's not a thing. The reality is that these birds have vertebra. They have a spine and they've got muscle and skin attaching it all together. So their heads cannot turn 360 degrees. That's not a thing. But with that said, they have more vertebra than we do, which makes them more flexible than we are. So they do actually have an extraordinary range, but their range is about 270 degrees. So to just so you can picture this in your head, if I were an owl, I'd be able to look straight forward. I could look left, I could look straight behind me, and I could look to the right. But then I would have to stop because I couldn't move any further. So I'd have to swivel my head back, but I could do it the other way. I could look to the right, to the back, to the left, and then come back around. So 270 is actually their range. And the reason they can do that is because they do have more vertebrae. So it makes them more flexible. Kind of ties into the fact that they have fixed eyes. Their eyes are basically stuck in their head because they have this really cool bone that surrounds their eyes. Gives them pretty good vision looking straight forward. And so because they can only look straight forward, they have to have that ability to turn their head constantly to see what's going on around them. So.
Thank you, Audrey. I think that was a great answer to the question. So we'll see if any more roll in.
Okay, cool. Let's move on then, shall we? So what we were going to talk about was just visually, if you see an owl sitting in a tree, one of the ways to tell a barred owl apart from the other owls is simply the stripes that are on their chest. It's actually why it's called a barred owl, because it has bars on the front of it. You'll find during this presentation, it may get annoying for you, and I really apologize. I over-enunciate the word barred owl. It's because we talk a lot about barn owls and barred owls. And if I say it too quickly, it's hard to tell them apart. So I have a tendency to over-enunciate, and that is why, if you're wondering why I constantly say barred owls. So those bars on the chest. So take a look at that picture. That is the bird we're talking about tonight. It's one of the most common raptors that we have in North Carolina. So round head, bars on the front, super dark eyes, and a yellow beak is what you're looking for. So I mentioned this earlier. Let's talk about my favorite body part of the owl. Oh, I'm sorry, they do have rounded tails, just so you know. Let's talk about semi-zygodactyl toes. First off, it's just fun to say zygodactyl because that's a cool word. But just the concept of what zygodactyl toes are, I think are super cool for me. So basically what it means, semi just means that they can move one of their digits around. So like I said, my volunteer Steve is on this call. He actually took these pictures for me. Thank you, Steve. So that we can illustrate what this principle is. So if you look on the left, Mama there is just doing a little scritch. So you can see her toes. She's got 3 up and 1 down, right? So that's a position that she would actually use when she's going to catch something. So she's going after that mouse. She's got 3 up, 1 down, and that's going to help her to grab on. The picture on the right is when she's resting, both of her feet on that limb. She's actually got 2 in the front, 2 in the back. So she has actually swiveled one of those toes to be on the back just to give her better grip on that branch for perching. So 2 in the front, 2 in the back is a common perching pose when you're looking at their feet. So if you didn't know that already, now you know. Semi-zygodactyl toes either means 3 and 1 or 2 and 2, which is kind of fun. All right, let's talk about, because I just mentioned they like to grab things with their feet. So that is an indicator of their diet. I think most of you out there know raptors are birds of prey, meaning they hunt and eat other animals. So right now, if we just want to play a quick game, if you want to put into chat some things that barred owls eat, go ahead and take a second. What do barred owls actually eat in the wild? And Tara, if you'll just let me know if anybody's answering or not. So we'll just give them a hot second. Think about what do raptors go after? And I'll give you a hint. Usually it's something smaller than themselves. So mice would be one of them.
Yes.
Absolutely. So hopefully this is what people are mainly thinking in their heads, right?
Yes, we have mice, snakes, chipmunks, squirrels, rabbits, squirrels, frogs, lizards, voles.
So you're getting into, so this stuff on the left is, what I think most people think of as the diet of the barred owl. What they don't usually know is, oh my goodness, I went too far. There it is. We have this stuff on the right. A lot of people don't know how varied the diet is of the barred owl. Y'all, they'll eat all kinds of things, not just rodents, but their diet is huge and it all kind of depends on the habitat that they live in. They're going to eat pretty much anything smaller than themselves that's available in their area, which includes frogs and salamanders and snakes and lizards and even insects and crayfish, which I call crawfish, but y'all know what they are. So crabs and fish is on that diet too. And I think that surprises a lot of people, especially when you talk about their habitat, which we'll talk about later on. All right, let's do this. Let's take pop quiz. I love pop quizzes, y'all. So let's talk about barred owls for a second, because we know that raptors are apex predators. They're top of the food chain, but are there other animals that will eat this barred owl? Again, it's a pretty big bird. It's a couple feet tall. So what would go after this fairly large bird?
We have the great horned owl is listed.
Boom.
That's from Stephen.
Good job. Just so you know, he's a docent, and if he didn't know that, I'd be very disappointed, but luckily he did know that. So yay for my docent knowing what eats a barred owl. And
yes, that was great. We also have eagles and larger owls.
Oh, very good. So larger owls. So really, I gotta tell y'all, and I probably shouldn't say this, but the fact is eagles are kind of lazy. So they're not really going to go for that tougher kill because barred owls are pretty big. Potentially they could if they wanted to, but they're going to go for easier prey than that. So great horned owls are going to be the primary suspect of taking these guys out in the wild. Now that's talking about the full-grown adult bird. Now we do have some things that will get into the nest to eat the eggs or to eat the chicks. So that's when we're looking at things like weasels and raccoons might get up there. So the young are vulnerable to more, but the adults themselves, those great horns, they gotta swivel those heads left and right. Can't move the eyes. They have to swivel the head to make sure they're not around. All right, good, you guys. Okay, let's talk a little bit about where we would actually find barred owls. Now, obviously, they're very common in North Carolina. Oh my gosh, I keep advancing way too far. So take a look at the map here. So really, these are East Gross homegrown birds, all up and down the East Coast for a very, 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 very long time. Within the last, 50 years, a new trend started to occur. And these birds started to get outside of their East Coast range. They started moving up into Canada, and then they kept going. And they made it over to the Pacific Northwest, which was unusual. Because typically for these birds, once they're in a place, y'all, they just chill. Like, they are not migratory birds. They don't like to fly really far. We're talking about most barred owls will stick to like a 1 to 5 mile range their entire life. They're not moving out really far. So it was kind of surprising, a few decades ago when these birds just started creeping and they made their way over. It's kind of interesting though, because there's a lot of talk. If you're interested in this, Google it, because it's become a problem that barred owls have moved to the Pacific Northwest. And the reason is this: those adorable spotted owls are unfortunately a little bit smaller and they're less aggressive. And y'all can already imagine what is happening in this scenario. Barred owls moved in and yay, buffet, yikes. So in the Northwest, they're actually considered to be an invasive species. Yes, Tara, do we have questions?
We have a question. Do we have a theory as to why they expanded their habitat? And I think you're kind of getting into this right now.
We do. So, it's not very well researched because it is a relatively newish problem. But because the barred owls are becoming a problem for the spotted owls, people are starting to really take notice. Then it's that discussion of invasive species, right? So one of the more commonly accepted theories is simply climate change, that trends in temperature have changed and it's allowed them to move to areas. Another thought has to do with habitat loss that could, just force them to keep creeping over and over. So those are the two hot, we really think that those are the two problems of what caused them to move to an area that you wouldn't normally find them. But sort of back to the issue, I just wanted you guys to be aware. I personally think it's super interesting that, we've got this native bird that everybody loves to death, but on the other side of the country, they hate this bird, y'all, because it's killing the bird that they love. And it turns into this sort of natural resources problem, because if you didn't know, all raptors are federally protected. You cannot harass or injure or kill raptors without very special permits. And so the question is, how do they sort of mitigate this problem that they're seeing with the barred owls that have moved? Anyway, that could be its own hour-long topic. So we're going to move on, but I wanted you to be aware because you may want to Google it and check it out for yourself. Question?
Yeah. Why would we only hear them in the spring and the fall in our backyards if they don't go to different places and like migrate?
So I promise you, they're there all the time. You are hearing them when they get a little feisty and they're looking for love. They tend to be more loud. And the more of them that you get together in an area, they tend to be more loud as well. So they're still there, I promise you. It's just they're a little more vocal times of year that they're just more active, especially during mating season. They can be a little chatty out there. All right, so let's talk about, I'm having so much fun with this advancing, and then I get really excited. I try to click it again and like I'm on the wrong slide. So let's talk a little bit about their actual habitat. Cool thing about this species is that they are an indicator species of old growth forests. which is fantastic. That's something we want to see, is old growth. Typically you'd see these guys in woodlands, so forested areas. They really like to hang out in swamps or river basins as well. The fact is, this is probably one of the most diverse birds that we have in the raptor category. They will live in metropolitan areas. I've got a whole story of being in uptown Charlotte at 11:30 at night, sitting at a stoplight, and literally something catches my eye and I look over and it's a barred owl catching a mouse in the middle of uptown. Y'all, they can live anywhere. And so they are very diverse, which lends to why their populations do so well. So not to be confused with other birds out there, these guys are healthy in their population because they're so adaptable to where they live. All right, see if I can, there we go. So I just kind of wanted to sort of talk a little bit, because these guys are actually really great to have around. And Steve can attest to this, because a lot of these pictures that are sent to me by Steve, like this picture, is from his own backyard. So when COVID hit and everybody was stuck at home, Steve was having a grand old time because his barred owl family was keeping him entertained. And luckily for me, he would send me the pictures and keep me entertained too. So these are animals you want to have around because frankly, they're gonna keep your rodent population down. And nobody wants a rodent problem around their house. So you want these barred owls to be around. So to sort of attract these guys, really the idea is that you need to provide them a food source, which is other wildlife. So we've already determined these guys eat kind of anything and everything. So if you have a healthy habitat in your backyard, you're going to encourage other species to be there, which is going to encourage that barred owl to be there. Yeah. I don't know if y'all could hear that lovely little Tara, I am having trouble. There we go. So one of, okay. Yeah, so we're having technical difficulties. We'll work it out there. So one of the things, and you know, the NCWF does a really great job with promoting natural wildlife or promoting habitats in people's backyards. And so one of the key components of that is talking about using less pesticides. So I will freely admit, I've got a really old school father who loves his grass probably more than his own children, who will use way too much fertilizer. And so years ago, when I started my career, we really had to sit down and have a serious conversation about how using too much pesticides or too many pesticides and in the yard is a problem for the community as a whole. Finally got through to them. So we now use less pesticides in our yard to keep those flowers and grass pretty. But it's beneficial because you are going to create more wildlife, a better habitat. You know, it breaks my father's heart that I talk about replacing grass lawns. Again, this alone could be its own hour-long conversation about how you just have a microcosm, you just have one type of habitat. Having varied plants, and Tara probably could speak better to this than I can, but just having a lot of variety of plants and trees and shrubs in your yard is really better for the environment as a whole, but it's great for barred owls. And then providing water sources. So to be clear, these water sources are not for those barred owls. Barred owls actually get the majority of their water content from the food they eat. So they're not sitting on your bird bath drinking your water, but they will occasionally use the bird bath for cleaning and whatnot. But the water sources really is, again, to promote other animals being there, which is going to promote the owls being there, if that makes sense. All right, so we encourage you, everybody on this call, I encourage you, please, you know, check out the Wildlife Federations. Tara, what is it called? What's the program you called that you guys certify gardens and yards and things like that?
Yeah, the certified wildlife habitat program. I'm actually looking right now. I was just going to throw a link in the chat for anyone.
Put it in the chat. If you're not aware of this program, it really is one of the coolest things that we have around. So check it out. It's
great. Food, water, shelter, and places to raise young, the most important things for your backyard in order to support all the different wildlife species. So I will throw that in the chat. Thanks, Audrey.
It's what we want. And you know what, Tara, moving forward, I'm going to put your little certification in my PowerPoint so that I can talk better about it next time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Audrey.
Very cool. All right, let's move on. So another way to help provide habitat for owls, if you're really interested in getting them into your neighborhood or into your yard, is to provide a home for them. So in the wild, these guys are cavity nesters, right? They will find a hole in a tree, and that's where they tend to nest. But not everybody has that in their backyard. So instead, you can either purchase or build your own owl box and attach these to trees, and eventually somebody will move in, check it out, and stay there. And if you're like Steve, you're lucky enough, they will come back every single year for nesting, and you get to see baby birds, like the picture on the left, which is one of my favorite pictures ever. So if you were interested in building your own owl boxes, we actually have plans of how to build those. If you go onto our Carolina Raptor Center website, you can find those there. All right, so let's talk about the babies, because y'all, let's take a moment and everybody just sort of squee inside, because look how cute that baby is. So breeding season for these guys, if you are interested in putting up an owl box, the reality is you need to put that owl box up before mating season happens. So you need to have it ready to go before they even move into the neighborhood to look for a place to raise their young. So really in January is when the barred owls are sort of scoping it out, looking for the best place that they feel safe, that there's a lot of food around, that's going to help them raise their young. So really those owl boxes are going to need to go up in November or December. So in January, they're checking it out. It's sort of funny because I was looking this up the other day of, is it the male or the female? Apparently scientists don't know which gender scopes out to figure out what the best place is. In March is typically when they lay their eggs. So barred owls will lay eggs once a year. And they have a clutch. So I say 2 to 3, but really it can be 1 to 5 eggs. So 2 to 3 is kind of average for these guys. Takes them about a month to incubate. And then by April, you get the babies, like in the picture. Cotton balls with eyes, y'all. Most adorable thing ever. For these guys, it takes about a month, maybe a few days, plus or minus, for the babies to fledge and then become juvenile enough to kind of move out on their own. So it's a month-long process. Every day we have babies in our rehab sometime every year, and it's astonishing to me. Every time I turn around, like a certain bird has just grown exponentially. It's like, what's happening? It's so quick. But very cool. So one of my favorite things, because there are stages to baby birds, I just needed to share this with you because it's one of my favorite barred owl facts. There's a stage called branching, right? So branching is right after what we call the fledgling stage. So fledglings are the ones that start to creep away from the nest, and they're exploring their habitat. They're seeing what's going on in the world around them. They're kind of learning things. They're not flying yet, but they're still exploring. Branching is so cool because what happens is these guys are extraordinary climbers. And I feel like almost nobody knows that. People panic when they see baby owls on the ground. They're like, I need to save this animal. But the reality is you don't. So everybody's assignment tonight, when we get off this call, is to actually Google branching owls and look at those videos on YouTube, because it is the coolest thing ever. So they have the ability to climb, and basically they look like little potatoes climbing up a tree, and they're trying to use their wings. Really, the wings aren't getting them anywhere. It's just more of a balance problem. But they physically can climb trees, and it's called branching. So Google that later. You will not be disappointed, I promise. All right. I just had to share this just because I think it's super cool. As I mentioned before, we have a very large rehabilitation center for raptors. And so since patient 1 back in the 70s, we always banned the birds we put back into the wild. And that banding is actually recorded in a national database. So it's all over the country. There's a record of birds that are being put in there. So we can actually claim that we found the oldest known wild barred owl in the United States. So just side note, I noticed on Cornell University's All About Birds, they have the wrong information because clearly they didn't know that we have recorded the oldest because theirs was younger than ours. So what happened for us was that we got, in 1993, we had a bird come in and he was patient 3,833. And that's what was on his band. 25 years and 9 months later, we got that same bird. It was extraordinary. When we got the bird in, the band was so rusted, we actually couldn't even pick out any details of the number. It took staff a lot of like work to get what you see in that picture. But once they were able to clean it up a bit, they found the patient number, looked back in the record and realized that we were admitting that bird again, 25, almost 26 years later, as patient number 22,150. Yay! Records are awesome. I don't know. I just like to share that because I think it's super cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about raptor conservation, because clearly this is the key to my job. Because as much as I love our raptor hospital, frankly, we want less birds coming through. So I'm going to take a second, and if you want to put into chat, tell me what you think is the #1 cause of birds coming to our facility. What happens to cause injuries in birds to come to our facilities? If y'all want to put that in chat, and Tara, tell me if anybody is answering. And Steve, yes, go ahead and put your answer in chat, because if you don't get this,
we have gun wounds, people tossing trash on or near streets, cars.
Good.
Good answers here. Cars. Yep.
And that's what it should be. Cars. Hands down, the
cars and shootings. Yep, that's what's coming up a lot.
So hands down, getting hit by cars is the #1 reason why a bird comes to our facility. I will tell you, gunshots and poisoning are that rounds out the top 3 reasons. So those pesticides really are a big deal because it poisons the birds, and people shooting at birds. I've already mentioned federally protected. That's against the law, y'all, not a thing. But people unfortunately are still doing it because they're just not educated. They're not aware that it's illegal, which is part of what we do is we teach people it's not okay. But let's talk about those cars for a hot second, because I work with a lot of children. And there's a lot of confusion about, how stupid is that bird to just fly right in front of this car? So I will tell you, and I hate to burst your bubble, owls are not actually very bright on the whole scale of animal intelligence. Owls are actually toward the bottom. We like to say that they're really good at being owls, because they are. They're very good at hunting and sleeping and mating. And that's kind of about it. But it's not an intelligence problem that's happening. What is actually happening has to do with raptor anatomy more than anything else. So I described to you guys earlier that their eyes are fixed in their head. So just to demonstrate this, to make it crystal clear to everybody sitting out there, if you stare at me on the screen right now, keep your head perfectly still and look up to the sky and look to the left and look to the right. So we can look all around without moving our heads. Frankly, the birds just can't do that because they have that bone, it's called a sclerotic ring, that holds their eyes in place. Beneficial because it gives them great binocular vision so they can see far distances. Not so great because it loses their periphery, which means they can't see things to the side. So at this point, you probably pieced it together, but let me go ahead and connect the dots for you. Unfortunately, on the sides of our roads, there's a lot of trash. People throw things out of their cars all the time. Honestly, that has nothing to do with our birds. Our birds aren't interested in that trash, but they are interested in the mice and the rats and the squirrels that are eating that trash. So over time, really, raptors have learned that roadways are like buffets, and it's a great, easy way to catch prey. So when they spot that mouse on the side of the road eating the Taco Bell bag, they lock eyes on it and they go for it. The problem is just they can't see cars coming from the side. And so that's how they get hit by cars. It's such an easy fix. If people would just keep items in their car and not throw anything out, we would drastically decrease how many birds are coming to our facility, which is what we want. And I'll tell you, it's not just, fast food wrappers or drink cups and things like that. Part of the problem are things that we just assume will biodegrade. Apple cores and banana peels. Y'all, I grew up, my mama, if I'm having a snack in the back seat, she's like, sweetie, throw that out the window, because she can't be bothered to throw it away at home. But the reality is that is also going to attract mice and rats, which is what we do not want on our roadways. So if everybody on this call will sort of internalize this message, please don't litter is what I'm asking of you. Don't throw anything, apple cores, banana peels, none of that. Keep it in your car. Throw it out at the gas station when you get gas, or take it into your home or your work when you go in from the car. Hands down, easiest way to help wildlife. It's such a minor behavioral change for us, but made such a big impact in the wild. Another thing, if you guys are interested in helping these fantastic creatures, is you could actually help us become a volunteer. So we have this amazing volunteer program. Actually, Brianna on this call is one of my volunteers. She is on the Raptor rescue team. She's a rescuer. So we get, like I said, we get over 1,000 calls every year. We only have a staff of 5 that work in the hospital. So as you can imagine, they're pretty busy people taking care of those injured birds on site. They don't have a lot of time to go out in the community to pick up injured birds. And so we utilize an army of volunteers to do this for us. We get a call, we contact the volunteers. They are so gracious and go out to pick up the bird and bring it back to us. So what you're looking at on the screen is sort of the progression of what the volunteers do on the Raptor rescue team. On the left, if you're a level 2 Raptor rescuer, then you are actually figuring out how to grab that injured animal. So we've got a picture, usually involves throwing a towel or a blanket over the bird, containing it, and then putting it into a box where you can see our volunteer in the middle has a bird in that red box, and you can see how excited he is to bring it in. And so he's brought it into so that our staff can check it out, start treatment, so that we can get to that end picture. That last picture on the right is our end goal, to put the birds back out into the wild. And our Raptor rescue team volunteers get to do that. So if that sounds something interesting to you, then please check out our website, carolinaraptorcenter.org. Click on volunteer, that's at the top of the page, and you can learn more about that program. One thing I will say about that program, which makes it unique and totally different than our other volunteer programs, is there is no time commitment involved. Really what happens is you're on a list and you're just agreeing to get text about, birds that need to be picked up. If you can do it, you do it. If you can't, you don't. And it's no big deal. So it's not like you have to do 4 hours a month or anything like that. It's literally whenever you can help, you help. And when you can't, you don't. So I don't know, Brianna, if you want to talk about this at all, since you are actually a Raptor rescuer.
Yeah, so I'll say that it's really rewarding because you don't only get to help the birds, you also get to meet a lot of people. Not so much with COVID, but we used to hand out the little cards so that people could go to the Raptor Center, so that you're also passing on more education and getting people excited about the raptors. And then if one of them, if your raptor that you rescued does survive, then you get to go and release it. And I think that's always a fun experience because the people who found it are very excited that their bird made it and is going back out into the wild. I know that not myself, but one of our other wildlife chapter members, Miss Vicky, she's gotten the opportunity to release one back at a school and take it out there so all the school kids could see. And, you know, it adds in that educational component too of like why we care so much about raptors. And so it's just really rewarding. And like Audrey said, it's extremely flexible if you're looking for a way to give back to wildlife or to volunteer. But you don't feel like you have that time commitment. Like you know, I work full time and I'm also taking online classes. So it's hard to volunteer at, you know, a set time every single week. But when I'm able to, I can go and pick up a bird if it's in my area. Because with the system too, you get to pick you like put in on the database, your local area. So they won't really ask you to go get a bird in, like we're in Union County, so they're not going to ask to go pick one up in Gaston County because it's too far away for me. So I think that's something that it's been really an awesome experience.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think, you know, most people in the program really enjoy it because it's just so different than most. You know, you get to experience things that most people will never see in their entire lives, but you actually get to be hands-on and a direct component of saving an injured animal, which I think is extraordinary.
You know, one of your comfort level too. Like you don't have to start out thinking that you have to go in to like.
Probably should. Thank you. I should mention that we have different levels. Level 1 means the bird is already in a box and you just go pick up the box and bring the box to us. So for people out there that are like, oh my God, I'm not grabbing a bird that has knives on their feet, that's crazy. We have level 1 that you can do. Pick up the box, bring the box to us. If you're a little more adventurous and are kind of excited about the idea of that picture on the far left, then we've got level 2 and we teach you how to appropriately catch these animals and contain them and bring them into us. And we actually even have higher levels than that. We've got specialty levels of re-nesting babies and getting birds out of chimneys and out of warehouses and things like that. So one of the cool things about the program is there is room to grow your knowledge and learn skills that really you're not going to learn anywhere else, I promise you. It's such an unusual program. One of the reasons that we're really kind of talking a lot about this right now is that, you know, Brianna told us that, yes, we do have a map that has areas portioned out. So when a bird is in a specific area, we only connect with those people. Right now, when we look at who is volunteering in what areas, we have a serious deficit in Union County, Stanley County, and Cabarrus County. So sort of that, you know, over there on that side of Mecklenburg, like on the other side of Mecklenburg, we really don't have a lot of volunteers. It's very rural over there, but we get a lot of calls about injured birds. And so that's kind of why we're telling you a little more than I normally would on this particular call, because I know a lot of you live on that side. And so if you're interested, please look into it, because we certainly could use the help over in those specific areas. So really, oh yes, Tara, are there questions?
You have 2 questions. Are the birds released near the area where they are found is the first question.
That's a good question. So let's answer that. Yes and or no. It depends on the case. It depends on the species. There are a lot of factors involved in figuring out where we're going to release a bird. The reality is we don't actually necessarily need to release a bird back to where we found it. The only reason we will go out of our way to do so is if the volunteer picking it up spots a mate in the area. Because really, truly, a lot of birds, so barred owls are an example, they are a very serious mated pair. And so we find a lot of times if one of the mates is injured, the other will be visible, keeping an eye on its injured mate. And so we train our volunteers just to do a quick sweep and look to see if they see one, because if they do, we will go to take that further step to try to take it back. If we don't see a visible mate though, really, we just need to put it into an acceptable habitat. And it will do very well. So yeah. The other reason we would not put it back is for gunshot victims. We keep very careful track of where birds have been shot, and we don't put birds anywhere close to those areas. So we've got some big old red dots on our maps of places we are not going to put birds back. So.
Thanks. That was very helpful. And then we also had a question. How do we find out more about becoming a bird delivery person?
A bird delivery person. I love it.
Volunteer. Yes.
Yeah. We call them raptor rescuers because you guys are true heroes of rescuing these animals. Go to our website, carolinaraptorcenter.org. And at the top of the page, for the additional menu, you'll see volunteer. So if you click on volunteer and then click on adult volunteer, you'll see Raptor Rescue Team, which is what we're talking about here. And that'll give you all the details of the program and what you would be doing. The way the onboarding works is that you would submit an application online, and then we would do an interview and talk a little bit more to make sure that you have a clear understanding what it is. And then if you're accepted into the program, then you go through this really great training that we have. And then you get buddied up with somebody so you're not thrown out by yourself on the first time. And then after that, you're a full-fledged raptor rescuer.
Thanks, Audrey. Then we had one more question. Do they mate for life?
So yes, in all intents and purposes, they do tend to stick with the same mate. That is not a tried and true fast rule though. Yes, sometimes they will, check other nests out. But typically, yes, they do tend to stay with the same mate, for as long as they possibly can. So
great, cool. Thanks. And do you have a few more slides, or should we go right into if there's any other questions?
Boom.
Oh, we'll look at that. Yeah,
Boom.
perfect. Yeah, so if anyone wants to, that's great. If anyone wants to ask a question out loud, you can also raise your hand with the little raised hand symbol. That is perfectly fine too. It's like that. And we will make sure to unmute you so you can ask your question.
And it does not have to be about barred owls. We literally, y'all, I will talk about anything at this point in time. I'm happy to talk about the facility, about raptors, about conservation, about Terra if you want. I mean, we can talk about anything. So now is your chance to ask those questions.
Definitely. Yeah, we have some good comments coming in here. Thank you, Chris, to your great info. We'll definitely share that with everyone afterwards. He's sending over some great info that he knows about barred owls. Just want to see if we have more questions coming in. It looks like we have those questions done. Audrey, I think the answering questions throughout really worked out well because people got their questions answered right when they had them. So
as we go, it's just easier, I think, for everybody. Cool.
That's perfect. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to share with all of us today?
It's been a joy hanging out. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I enjoyed talking to you guys, and hopefully we'll get to do this again in the future. I noticed in chat, yes, we have a bald eagle release tomorrow, which is kind of fun. So just to mention some upcoming events that we have. Tomorrow and Friday at Lake Norman State Park, if you just go to the end of the road at the state park, we're going to be releasing a bald eagle, which is, we only do a few of those a year, and we always try to make them open to the public because they are cool to see. So I can't remember the exact time off the top of my head, but check out our social media. I promise you, it's on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the exact time. But if you got some time tomorrow, go check out a bald eagle being put out. If you've got kids in your family, then we have a Halloween event coming up on the 30th and 31st. We have some cool Halloween things going on the trail. We're going to have a costume contest, some fun treats to pick up along the way, and some things to learn about owls, because it's our Halloween event. And then November 6th is our what we call STEM on the Wing Day. And it's a fantastic day where we invite all kinds of partners in the STEM field to come in and talk about what they do. And they always have really fun activities for people to participate in. So definitely come check that out. The best part of that day is it's sponsored by MSC Industrial. And so admission to the Raptor Trail is free on November 6th. So come check that out. And all of that information will, again, be on our website, carolinaraptorcenter.org.
Thanks so much. This was amazing. So thank you for speaking to us about barred owls. birds that we all love and keep dear to our hearts, because I'm sure we see or hear them pretty frequently. I did want to share, I had sent out a poll before. Who has seen a barred owl in their house or their like yards or like neighborhoods, and 83% of people have seen a barred owl. And I should have asked who has heard a barred owl too. So maybe I'll do a follow-up in
far more common to hear them than to actually see them.
I think that would be a definite yes for me. Yep. So yeah, barred, not barn or barred. Yes.
Yes. Barred. Like
barred.
Bars,
They all blend together. That's a really good point. So yeah, thank you all so much. And this was wonderful. We'll send the recording probably in about, it's typically about 3 days after. So probably the beginning of next week, it will come on over. So if you guys missed any great information that was shared here, you'll be able to get it then. Thank you, Audrey and Brianna. Was there anything else you wanted to share? Thanks for putting on this great program, Brianna.
All right. Well, thank you guys and have a great evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thanks for being here.